Now, I don't know of any elite quarterbacks that are free agents that are going to come here next year. I'll have to look at the free agent list maybe. Yeah. But elite quarterbacks, free agents, I don't know. Are you going to draft a quarterback to be your guy? Brock, do you want to really want to go with Brock Osweiler for a Super Bowl run next year? Or would you rather have Peyton Manning back for maybe one more year to see if he can pull it off? I'll take Peyton Manning back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, he said that scenario. It sounds like the Jets until you. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
You know.
And when he said on Christmas Eve that I'd love to come back as long as the Broncos will have me, I'm still, having fun. I still want to play.
Now it's something different.
Last night was like, I can't tell you that. I cannot tell you that I'll be back again. I need to process this game and see where we go. I think he was just completely disappointed. In his performance.
Stuck in the moment of just feeling rotten.
So we'll see what he decides. But let's go to the man, Troy Renck from the Denver Post, the Broncos beat writer who joins us just about every Monday morning here on the Orange and Blue Review. Troy, good morning. How are you?
Good, guys. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So we're here talking about Peyton. Of course, that's the big question today. One of many, I suppose. What grade would you give him yesterday in that performance?
Well, the offense probably got an F. D-. He was part of it. I mean, it's given the context, biggest game of the season, 13 points, by far their worst home performance. The previous low at home was 24 points. So along with the group, it was a collective F other than, C.J. Anderson. I mean, he was the one guy that performed well, and Julius Thomas had a few moments. But the offense as a whole, it was a complete meltdown.
Yeah, I mean, look, scoring 6 points in the final 55 minutes of the game at home against the team you're supposed to beat, and you're supposed to be healthy after a bye week. Troy, was this as shocking a performance from this team as you've seen?
Yeah, it was very reminiscent of the St. Louis Rams game, where they were just dominated. As you mentioned, once they scored that first touchdown, Broncos' offense was completely ineffective. The receivers couldn't get off man coverage. They got away from the run a little bit too early. And Peyton Manning, he said he audibled into a lot of those long throws, but he was 2 for 12 on throws over 15 yards, 8 overthrows. His previous high this season, I believe, was 5 overthrows. And it looked like he was getting rid of the ball too soon because he had guys open. Demaryius Thomas once on the left sideline was wide open, and he threw it to the wrong shoulder. It was just stuff you don't see from the Broncos and Manning. And part of it was the receivers weren't getting off press coverage. And the bigger surprise is, the Colts don't have a great defense. Honestly, they have the worst defense left in the playoffs.
Yeah, they managed to make the Colts defense look really good yesterday, didn't they?
Yeah, and that again, those were some of the surprising things. And they got out, then once they got out of rhythm, they couldn't get back because Demaryius Thomas drops a few short passes. Wes Welker and Peyton have a miscommunication on a short pass. I mean, it's stuff that you don't typically see from the Broncos. Again, it was very reminiscent to me of that Rams game where you're just trying to go deep down the field. That's not the Broncos offense. And if you would have told me that their game plan yesterday was going to rely on a vertical passing attack and a defense that didn't blitz much at all once they got behind, I'd be like, well, that's a recipe for failure. I mean, that's not how they play.
Right, that's not them. I mean, I thought back to the dominant performance by the Seahawks in the Super Bowl where Peyton was out of sorts. They couldn't get anything going. The offense was kind of just stuck in the mud, and it just looked like they were back to that same thing. Troy, first possession of the second half. Broncos have it, 3rd and 5. Peyton Manning leaves the pocket. He probably has 25 yards of running room in front of him, and he decides not to run it. Pass incomplete, and they punt. 3 and out on that first possession. How telling was that play to you about where Peyton Manning is right now?
Well, clearly he's got some issues with that quad that were more serious than he let on. Understandably so, guys. The NFL is the Kremlin when it comes to stuff about injuries. They hide everything. So clearly wasn't healthy. But to your point, Lionel, the bigger issue for me is that physical limitations that Peyton Manning was going through, whether it was declining arm strength or his legs specifically, were affecting his mental decisions.
Yes, exactly.
He is the best and brightest at making decisions, processing information on the field. He had 25 yards of open space where he could have moonwalked 10 yards of it and got a first down.
Right,
yeah. And didn't. And that's what I'm saying. That's what tells me that when your physical limitations, something's bothering you, it affects how you perform mentally. because it was a bad decision. And Peyton Manning, of all the things you can criticize for him, the one thing you don't criticize are his decisions in game. And if you're going to give him a report card each week, he's typically at A minus. And he made decisions yesterday that to me reflected his physical limitation.
And do you think, Troy, that's why he said in the post-game press conference that I can't tell you that when asked if he was planning to come back? Do you think that he has maybe realized that, wow, I made some really bad decisions in this game. I don't know what my future holds.
I think that's a little bit of it. I think the other part of it is the coaching staff. What's going to happen?
Right.
I mean, Jack Del Rio is a candidate for Oakland. Adam Gase is a candidate in multiple spots, including Atlanta and San Francisco. And John Fox has now put himself firmly on the Bunsen burner here in the hot seat on whether he goes. And while all those things are fair speculation, and Fox having a 1-and-out here after the Super Bowl loss, the reality is Peyton Manning will be entering next season at 39. Is he going to want to undergo some major makeover, new coach, new offensive coordinator? I mean, Peyton Manning, of all the things he is, he's a man of detail. He's a creature of habit. If they decide to make major coaching changes or Gase leaves and Fox is not going to be here, I think that will directly impact Manning's thinking on whether he would come back. So I think it's twofold. The coaching situation and his own physical issues. Is he healthy enough to come back and perform at a high level?
So what do you think of the of Coach Fox? Do you think this is it for him then?
I don't think it is, but it's kind of one of those weird things where they need to have the meetings, and a lot of weird things can happen. Self-evaluation is critical. Where do they come up short? And does John Elway place that squarely on Fox? In their two biggest games, and if you throw the Patriots in earlier this season, their three biggest games the last two seasons, they have actually got bombed. I mean, just thrashed. That ultimately falls on the head coach. Now, how much of that falls on the coach, that's going to be up to John Elway to figure that out. It's difficult to fire a guy who's gone to 4 straight playoffs. You're winning 12 games every year. I mean, his resume, if he's on the open market, he gets hired immediately. But is he the right guy to get this team to that next step? That's what they have to decide. And if they're going to make change, how do you make change and then keep continuity with, Peyton Manning? Would the new coach want to keep Adam Gase? I mean, it's difficult. That's what I'm saying. It's not just as easy as, fire John Fox, bring in the next guy. There's a lot of things hinging on this. Manning's future, Gase's future. There's a lot of layers to this.
Right. I mean, you talk about the next guy. Who are you going to bring in to replace Fox? That's the question. John Fox just signed a 3-year extension back in April, so they're going to have to pay him for a few years. And Adam Gase, Troy, we say he's the hot candidate. He's interviewed for, 4 jobs now. If he's the hot head coaching candidate, what would be the problem in saying, Fox, you're out, Adam Gase, you're the head coach? If he's the hottest candidate out there right now, why don't you make him coach of your team? And then Peyton Manning comes back, you make one more run.
But that's certainly, I think, is one of the scenarios out there. I don't know if that's one of them they're thinking. But here's the thing. If that happens, what is the likelihood that Jack Del Rio stays? I would say it goes down dramatically if he gets passed over for the head coaching job here.
Right.
I mean,
I think Broncos fans would revolt if Jack Del Rio got the job. Just looking at social media and the reaction to Jack's defense, where they say, look, he's got all pros all over the place, played vanilla, didn't blitz as much as he should. Jack Del Rio's taking a lot of heat. I don't think any Broncos fans want him, from what I've read, Troy.
Right. Well, again, they led the AFC in defense, and I certainly understand their frustration with yesterday's performance. But, again, when you look at it in context with the season, they were the AFC's best defense. They had their worst game you picked a bad day to have an awful day. But, again, these things are all kind of connected. That's what's interesting to me is if Gase were to be promoted, what happens to Del Rio? Del Rio's promoted, what happens to Gase? And if Fox goes, what happens to Manning? These things are all kind of interlocked.
Sure.
And they have to base that on Manning's window, which may or may not have closed yesterday. And that's the thing. It's a very not odd, it's just a very unique position they're in franchise history. And you guys raised a great point. For all those people who want Manning to retire today, what's the alternative?
Right.
You're going to have Brock Osweiler go for a Super Bowl run? That typically outside of Russell Wilson, young quarterbacks don't lead teams to Super Bowls. So if this team's built for Super Bowl or bust, is Brock the guy? And if he's not, who? No one else is out there.
Well,
they don't exist.
Cooler heads will prevail as time goes on. I know the bitterness everybody feels today, you got to wonder if that doesn't also, calculate into Gase and Del Rio's thought about, well, maybe it's time for me to move on. Maybe they're going to go on their own accord.
Yeah, maybe the window is closed. So, Troy, what you're telling us is it's going to be a very quiet and eventful offseason, right?
Yeah, nothing going on here. No reason to look here.
All right, Troy. Thanks so much for joining us, man. We'll see you soon.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Troy.